Hi everyone, I want to start this video off with some talk about Shadowlands. I'm pretty excited for Shadowlands and all of the class changes that have been announced, but I do want to talk about some survival specific things just to get some other opinions on the subject. I understand that this is very, very early on to talk about class changes, but I do not want Shadowlands to be a repeat of BFA. So here's my checklist of things that I would personally do to Survival Hunter to make them feel better to play. First things first, Mongoose Bite has to be made baseline. This is the Survival Hunter ability. From Legion through BFA, the Spec has always been building up Mongoose Bites and dumping as much damage as you possibly can with it. As of this recording, the talents they're buffing directly compete with Mongoose Bite in the talent row, and if one of them happened to be more competitive DPS-wise, we would lose our spec-defining ability. Spec-defining abilities is a touchy subject, as many people who played Survival and Legion would tell you that aside from Mongoose Bite, Flanking Strike was also the spec-defining ability. It always felt satisfying to press, and even had talents that would reduce the CD of different abilities when you pressed it, including Mongoose Bite. I miss Flanking Strike. I know it can't come back into the game the way it was, as Mongoose Bite isn't on a charge system anymore, but at the very least, rename Kill Command to Flanking Strike or something. I think it's important that a melee spec has more than a single melee ability. The next thing I want to talk about is Serpent Sting. Serpent Sting sucks. I'm fine with it staying, but it needs some changes. My favorite suggestion that I heard from the class Discord was giving it a fixed and longer duration, but having the ticks scale off of haste. Currently, during your CD, this button is not even worth pressing, but if you gave it some type of haste scaling and a duration, maybe 20 seconds or so, it wouldn't feel awful to press this button. Now, I'm going to talk about some talents that I would be happy to see changed. Currently, you're always spec'd Bloodseeker. Bloodseeker just makes Kill Command apply a bleed, and for each bleeding enemy around you, you get 10% attack speed. This ability is boring, and as it stands, it will probably continue to be the talent we run in Shadowlands if nothing is changed. I would recommend replacing this talent altogether with Caltrops, which was an ability we had in Legion that just did some AoE damage on a relatively short cooldown. This way, they could adjust Steel Trap to potentially be better for a single target situation. Speaking of single target rotations, let's talk about our current CD and Birds of Prey together. Our cooldown sucks, and with the loss of Blur of Talons, our Azurite trait, our cooldown will be on the very weak side of cooldowns, and Birds of Prey will probably never see use again. I think the easiest fix to make this talent usable is maybe having Birds of Prey just double the damage increase from your cooldown instead of extending it. I know it sounds boring, but talent diversity is always a good thing. I don't know how this would work in practice, but I think building up for one giant satisfying Mongoose Bite window could be interesting. The last change I want to talk about is something very near and dear to my heart. It's no secret that Butchery is my favorite ability in the entire game. In Legion, there were so many different ways to buff your Butchery. The legendary chest piece would make your Mongoose Bites increase the damage of your Butchery, or carve, by 10%, stacking up to 100%. And the more known one was your artifact trait, Hell Carver. Hell Carver would increase the damage of Butchery based on how many targets it hit with no cap. My suggestion would be to make Butchery baseline and put one of these in a talent row. This would make our AoE rotation much more interesting and engaging, because as it stands now, Carve might actually be the worst ability in the entire game. Now, I want to end this on a positive note, so I'll talk about some of the changes that I like. I think however we manage to get kill shot, it will be an improvement to our rotation, and it's something that I look forward to having. I'm also interested in seeing how this will play out with a Mongoose Bite rotation. They also did say that they're buffing Hydra's Bite and Butchery, which gives me a lot of hope that they plan on at least improving our AoE rotation. I also like the Chakram buffs because it's been too damn long since I've gotten to press my Chakram button. Well, that's all I've got for now. This is already a lot more than I wanted to say, especially because we literally haven't even seen the alpha yet. But I really do want some changes for my favorite spec. I mained it in Legion, and I'm currently maining it in BFA as well. I'd really like to start the next expansion off with my favorite spec, but if we start to lose my favorite abilities, and we see a shift to a non-Mongoose Bite playstyle, I might not be able to bring myself to playing it, as it would just be a BM hunter with less buttons in its current state. Thank you for watching.